And I think it's a pretty good symbiosis. It's certainly good for our program, and I have many of my students or former students here. And in fact, I think we probably comprise about half of the attendance. But it's also a nice venue to have a conference. So thank you for coming and welcome.
Alan, did you want to come up? Where's Alan? Oh, there you are. There's a couple of people that we were asked to recognize by BCIA for just their outstanding work over this past year, their dedication and passion. And Shannon Kratky, sorry. Thank you. Let's give her a big round of applause. Thank you. And Alan?
And we had the excitement this year. St. Mary's also has a program in town, along with Mark Jones. We're doing our own program, but united, as you can see, and we're excited to have our students here as well. But this year at ISNR, we had the pleasure of one of our students, our first student, getting our first award, that many more come with Dan Reed, got what was known as the Jeannie Davis Scholarship Award. So just bring him up.
And that is the award we're recognizing both of these students for. And Shannon's been in the program, very helpful and a quick learner and outstanding in a number of ways. So we're glad you were able to get the award. And come up here, get some pictures made. And unfortunately, we don't actually have the awards. They are in the mail, right? So, all right, let's gather around here with our respective students. All right.
All right, we're ready for our last presentation. Let's keep our energy levels up and take in this good information.
Congratulations to the students.
Yes.
It's so good. I wish when I applied for my PhD, it was so hard to get an advisor that understood what I tried to do. So it's so nice that you have all the support and great mentors. Okay, so our next lecture, one of the interests of the society was what?
You know what? We got switched off. Can somebody? So I think we're still on other something.
Somebody who messed with the music. I wonder who that is.
These are settings I don't even know are in there. There we go.
Okay. So one of the interests of the society is what else we can share, what else we can help all the attendees. And I'm very lucky to have been working with Angelica. She's how many years clinician? Experienced clinician? Don't say. But I mean, when I was living in Philadelphia, I was very fortunate to work with her in her private practice. And it's amazing what they do, how they run this, medium-sized practice, neurofeedback practice. And I learned so much from her, their logistics, their process with the clients, their understanding, education, all the steps along that are very important to have a successful case and help the clients as much as possible. So I learned from her, and with all this learning, I still it, and I was able to then open more clinics around the world and help more people. So I think we both have fairly good amount of clinical experience, and Angelica running so many times, and I don't have that long-term experience, but I have experience in setting up clinics, to training clinicians, what is the procedures, helping to guide all the process. So we hope you find it helpful. So we're going to cover about this, how you need to prepare the client before biofeedback and neurofeedback training, right? When you talk to a new person that steps into your door, or somebody calls to your phone, right? The information that you provide there, at that moment, you can direct it, they are coming to your office or they are not. As how you explain this intervention to them. So it's so special that moment. In the first contact, you explain the procedure to the client. Now, it's not easy to attract them immediately, in 2 minutes, in 1 minute that you have them in the phone. You have to be very precise what you want to say, because it's a complex procedure. You cannot talk, okay, it's a neurophysiology, and you will lose them there. But also, they are calling because they want to understand what it is. It's not something that everybody else has done in the past, and they can just go straight and, oh, I know what it is. We're not selling shoes, right? Everybody knows what is a shoe, so they know what they are looking for. So it's very specific how you need to approach the client from the beginning, and when they are in your office, how you are going to instruct them. We're going to talk about, very important about the relationship. This is a key to have a successful intervention, as any other psychological intervention or medical intervention, about the procedures and the guidelines that we will cover.
Okay.
Are you?
So I actually want to go back to that because,
Yes.
you know, Deanna put out some things that are very important. From how you answer the phone. I always feel like the day somebody calls your office, that's a bad day for them. They finally decided they're going to take care of something that they have not been able to take care of successfully before, or that they have not even taken care of. And so we really need to be extremely welcoming, you know, more so than, hello, Sadar Psychological. It's, you know, we need to be able to convey to them, I'm happy you called, and I'm happy for you that you called. And we want to make them feel enthusiastic about what's happening, that they made the right choice. So I spend a lot of time personally on phone calls. Now, I'm not in favor of free first sessions. What we do is very hard, it's very complex, and I can't go and get a pair of shoes for free. So I don't think you should be able to get therapy or neurofeedback for free. But should you be able to tell if this is the right place for you to start? Yes, I think that's fair enough. You know, so I'll ask people, why did you call? How did you get referred here? How did you find us? Oh, I looked you up on the internet. What did you Google? How come you picked us? Why us? You live in Delaware. Why did you pick us? What was it about our website that attracted you? The website is very important. If you don't have a website, get one fast. It's very important. So from there, oh, well, and people may call and say, I want therapy. And I'll ask them, okay, do you mean talking therapy? Because we also do biofeedback. And do you know what biofeedback is? No. My insurance company told me you do therapy. Well, yeah, we do. But we do biofeedback. And biofeedback is the process of understanding how things are happening for you and us helping you to learn how to improve them yourself so that you have a skill that you can work with. People are like, oh, I'm interested in that. Maybe I'd like that. And if they're like, I don't know, I send them to the website. Educate yourself. Learn about this. And then make a better decision. Don't just, how many times have you had somebody that has gone to therapy? Oh yeah, I went to therapy for 5 years. How'd that go for you? Not so good. And you stayed for 5 years? Because they don't know what else to do. The people don't know what to do. So it's our job to help them. Okay.
Yeah, so this was just like there.
All right. So, is it a suitable intervention? That's tricky to decide over the phone, so we got to get them in. And I'll say to people, why don't you just come in and we'll just talk about it? You know, you don't have to make a decision over the phone if you want to stay with us. What I want to do is help you understand, and I want to get you to the place that's best for you. That's what my job is. With that, people come in and we want to do an intake. I allow an hour and a half for the initial session. I don't like to be rushed. There's always something I forget. Always. You know, talked about Raynaud's earlier. Oh, wait a minute before you go, I didn't ask this. How many times do I just forget because it doesn't seem relevant? Do you have headaches? Oh yes, I have migraine right now. You didn't mention that. Well, that's not what I came in for. So as much time as is needed is really what we take. I mean, if I can get it done in 50 minutes, if I'm working with somebody who has an adopted child, the child is out of control, I'm not going to make that kid stay there for an hour and a half if I don't need to. If I can get enough information to say, let's just begin with a little bit. Okay. There was a person in our town who was new to neurofeedback, and I ran into him at a conference, and I knew he was new to neurofeedback, and he started talking about the epileptic patient he was working with. I knew his supervisor. She's a friend of mine. I called up the supervisor and I said, what is going on? She says, Aunt, I can't stop him. I can't stop him, but he's seen epileptic patients, so all I do is try to guide him. You have no idea how much harm that could do to the patient, to our profession, to all kinds of things. So you really do need to know what is your knowledge base. Don't venture out. Call, get a supervisor. You guys will have our phone numbers by the time you're done. I talked with other people that were here. People that are in this field want to help because, as I say, it's kind of a cult. And we love bringing other people into the cult. So we want to really embrace you. We want to help you. We want to guide you. I have never called up somebody that they've said to me, I don't have time to talk about that. They may say, how about you call me over the weekend? Or how about you call me tonight at 9 o'clock? But never no. So you can call up people. Start with cases that are mild, that aren't so complex. ADHD is not mild and not so complex. Somebody walks into my office and says, we want to do neurofeedback for ADHD. My answer is, okay, let's sit down. I want to know what you want to do neurofeedback for. I heard you say ADHD, and that's like walking into a doctor's office and saying, I'd like you to do surgery. For what? ADHD, we know of 4 different biomarkers that we know of. You train them wrong, you're going to make things worse. So mild symptoms, start with family members. Then work your way up. Venture out a little bit. Start with harder family members, harder friends. Start with your own kid. That's what everybody does, is starts with their own kid. That's how your kid hooks up.
Yeah, I think this point is very important, that really decide for your experience and knowledge. Many people ask me, there is, diagnosis-wise, somebody that is not appropriate for neurofeedback. What is a diagnosis that you definitely don't want to do neurofeedback? And I really don't think there is such a case. I mean, we know more and less depending on the research that we have. There are disorders that we have more knowledge. There are disorders that we know less, right? But I think really what you have to decide is you. Know why you know. And depending on what you know, if you can help this person that is looking for your help. So it really is depending on your knowledge and your scope, then you will decide, yes, I have the ability to help them or not. And this is a huge responsibility to consider. Okay. oh, so this is what we're talking about. Do I feel competent to treat this patient, right? And of course, if you're a newbie, you don't have experience, then you need to start with simple cases. What you learn when you have mentors and during your mentorship. What are your goals? You have very clear, you need very specific goals with this that you need to set up with your patient. What are really looking forward? And ADHD or trauma or any other cases, the symptoms can be a long list. But exactly what they want, like if we can point to 3 main things that we can improve, what are the main 3 symptoms that they are looking to get help? If you think these 3 goals, these 3 symptoms you are able to help them, then you need to see specifically the goals. What are the patient hope to see to solve this life, right? It's very, very important to define the goals and the hope that the patient is looking. And we have to be very realistic with them, right? We cannot say we won't be able to cure you. We are not going to, if this is not a panacea, we need to work. We know that we can help. There's a lot of work that has to be done, but what they are really looking forward. And it's very easy for them to have very high expectancies. It's very easy to, no, this is going to be it. I know, I feel that this is going to solve all my problems, right? And we really need to grant them. And say, this is a tool, we will try our best, we'll see how much we can help, but, we need to be very realistic. The patient is really motivated to make this change, right? How much is the commitment that required for this? Neurofeedback, it's a long-term intervention. It's not a quick fix. It will take time. We need to be patient. If they are looking for the quick fix, probably medication will help them fast. So that we really need to explain them that they have to be patient to see the results. And work hard and be commitment and discipline.
I spend anywhere from a half hour to an hour just defining the goals after the intake. We want the patients to know and be in agreement about what we're working on and towards. We use a rating scale. We actually got something from Matt Fleischman, if any of you know of him, years ago. Matt Fleischman has an ADHD clinic in Seattle, and the goals are very precise. I'll start out by saying, if I could give you 3 wishes of how your brain would be different, what would you like to see change? And I'm going to help you understand what I mean. If somebody gave me 3 wishes, I would like my brain to help me be more patient. I would also like my brain to be able to not drift so much. These are the kinds of things I'm looking to understand about you. And somebody might say, well, I'd like to feel better. You really have to help them narrow that down. What does it mean if you feel better? What would be different? I wouldn't be depressed. And if you wouldn't be depressed, what wouldn't you be feeling? Or what would you be able to do? How would your life change on a day-to-day basis? If I weren't depressed, I would be able to get up in the morning. Oh, well, that opens a whole can of worms. Because in the intake, we would have talked about very detailed information about sleep. What time do you go to sleep? How long does it take you to go to sleep? From when you start to when you get in bed, how long does that take you? I'm trying to understand, do they get stuck on things? Can they transition? Are they watching TV? What are they doing? And then when you get in bed, how long does it take you to fall asleep? Once you fall asleep, do you stay asleep all night long? And, you know, as people get older, they'll be like, well, I get up to go to the bathroom. That's okay. Can you go back to sleep after you get up and go to the bathroom? If you get up and go to the bathroom 4 times, that's not okay. You shouldn't be doing that. And how are you waking up? Do you wake up okay? Do you wake up refreshed? Okay, so now we'll go back to the depression. I would be less depressed I wouldn't sleep as much. Good. What do we want to change about your sleep? There's a good starting place. And they're going to measure it. We give people journals. You could, and when I can tell it's really not going to work, I'll let them use their phones, but I want to get them away from electronics. So I like to give them I go down to Staples. Before school starts, Staples has everything on sale, and I buy like 50 journals. We just put a label on them, and everybody gets a journal when they come in. But they write their goals in there. And if they don't come back to their session with their journals, that tells me something about how hard they're working and how compliant they are. Or it tells me they have super big ADHD, or they're disorganized, or it tells me something important. Okay, so is the patient committed to therapy? We've already done a little bit of something about that, but along the way we have to keep checking. How do we check if they're committed to therapy? If it's heart rate variability, I'll tell people, you could probably knock this out in 3 sessions. We can get you rolling on this. You can buy a home training program, and you can work on it at home. Come back and see me 2 months later. We'll make sure that you're doing it. We'll check up on you. But if you want to get more involved and we do neurofeedback, you're committing to, let's say, an average of 30 sessions on the low side. Because the people that come to us at this point are more involved. We also get a lot of adopted kids. We get a lot of chronic pain people that need a variety of interventions. So let's say 30 sessions. If you're lucky, it'll be 20. It might go 50. It might go more. If somebody says, ooh, I wasn't thinking that much. Well, how much were you thinking? 10. You know, I learned the violin when I was 45. To learn it. I still have to practice a lot, and I still stink at it. So that's not nearly as important as what you're doing. Let's look at if this is the right time in your life for you to do this. Maybe if it's a teenager, we want to wait till summertime, where they're not playing field hockey, and not doing social club, and not doing art club, and not doing dance. We'll wait till the summertime. That's okay. Let's do this when it fits into your life. There are 3 components. There's finances, and there's time, and there's interest. So we got to have all these components for what we're going to choose. And I'm perfectly happy if somebody does heart rate variability and decides not to come back. If we've given them something that can help them, and you know how I love heart rate variability, so that's okay with me. Do they have external support? Is there going to be a husband at home complaining about the wife not cooking dinner because she's coming to neurofeedback? Is there a parent who doesn't really care if the kid goes to neurofeedback or not, and it's all the other parent? That's going to flop at some point. It's not going to work. You know, do you turn them away? That's a clinical decision, but it's going to be a tough one for you. Sometimes we get parents where one of the parents travels a lot. They're kind of benign. They're not going to get in the way, but they're not going to help. That's different. So it's not that you have to have everybody in the world on board, but you want to make sure that you're not going to have people that are in the way. Sometimes the first step is just to get people to where they can follow recommendations, where they can go home and practice the things that you're telling them, where they can get to their appointment on time. We have one person who's elderly, who has some brain damage from stroke. She can't get there but 45 minutes into her session. But she doesn't have any family in the area. So we're going to tell her no. We're going to work with her. And we're going to try to get her to the point where she can, the first goal is get to your appointments on time. And are they able to follow recommendations when you make them? I like to recommend to all teenagers, take a week off of electronics. When you can, let's pick a week, you experiment. Send out a notice to all your friends. I'm going dark for a week. It's a science experiment. Okay? They'll be okay with that. You're going to miss 2,000, Twitters and
likes.
Facebooks and all kinds of things. But let's try it. Let's just see. This is part of an experiment. So I don't even say to them, you shouldn't do you shouldn't be doing it, you shouldn't be doing it as much. Say, let's just experiment, and then you decide. We want to put them in control of what they're doing. A lot of the kids come back and they say, I like that. I like that okay. And I know how hard it is. We all know how hard it is. I haven't checked my phone since I've been here. I'm a little uneasy about that. And I'm like, you know what? The world's going to go on. If I was in a car crash, it would go on. So they can live without me for a day. As well as the recommendations from physicians. Are you taking medication? Are you taking it as prescribed? Or are you playing around with your medication? That's going to affect any type of training you do with them.
Yeah, I think probably one of the how I can say, tricks to help them to be compliant, because we know one session won't make a difference, right? Or 5 sessions. We really want to get a good amount of sessions so they can really feel and experience the improvement. So this is why many clinics try to encourage the client to buy a package of sessions, right? And this is not only for the billing purposes, it's so if they buy 10 sessions, they don't have their options, then go for 10 sessions then. So they will be more able to see the changes and the improvements, and they will say, you know, this was worth it, let's buy another 10, right? That they pay by session, that it's easier, that they can drop off.
While I said I don't do free sessions, we did, if somebody had no idea what neurofeedback is, they didn't have any experience with it, they were scared about it, we would have them come back and meet with the technician for 20 minutes, and the technician would hook them up, show them what the brain waves look like on the screen, and just identify some markers. Show them how you make muscle artifact, how that's different. So we would do that for one session for free. But otherwise, I would tell people, don't come in for one training session. It's like going to the gym one time. It's okay. Doesn't hurt you. But you're not going to lose a pound. So if you're going to go to the gym, buy a membership and go twice a week. Go on a regular basis. Become committed to it. The same thing with the biofeedback training.
Yeah, and let the client see how is a session, how is the equipment, how it's required. They need to see the sensors and everything. We'll talk about that. Is that me?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So we need to educate that. So we are not only therapists, we really need to give a lot of understanding. And I was attending a lecture the other day about how to explain all this high-level physiology, neurophysiology to a client, right? And we really need to find the level of understanding. If they are a scientist and they will be eager to understand in a molecular level, go in that pathway. They will really want to understand that pathway. If they don't have that level, then use apples and oranges. This is what happened. But you need to explain them the mechanisms and the reasons and the research. And some people want to know, well, here is your USB drive with all the papers that I would recommend you to read. Or, you know, I don't want to read. Can you refer me to a YouTube video? Yeah, there are some YouTube videos that can be helpful. So you need to really educate at the level of the client, because it's very important. And sometimes you can find the level right away. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, I say, oh, I think they are understanding me. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going very good. Oh, their eyes look so clear that they are getting it. They walk out of the office and the wife is like, great, what happened? Oh, this is great. I want to do it. Jess, what it is? I don't have a clue. So really so what I start choosing right now is, you know, what level do you want me to explain you? I mean, this is very complex, very easy. And yeah, there are people that they are so overwhelmed with all the information, so you know, you need to keep it very, very basic.
I always ask, if it's parents, I want to know what they both do for a living. And
Yeah.
try to explain it to
Yes.
them that way.
Yes.
And as much as possible, I try to get the kid to explain it to the parents.
Yes, but there is a whole session before starting to educate, give them resources. And of course, you will begin building up the relationship there and the trust. So it's very important. And all the process and consequence of neurofeedback, you need to be committed. It's going to take time. This is what is happening in each session. This is what is required. You need to follow specific recommendations. This is how it is. So very, very clear. Have checklists. Show them in diagrams, but very visual. This is where you have to be committed to do it.
All right, so
I think we covered all
covered a lot of
this.
that, right?
Yeah.
Any questions about this stuff so far, or comments? We have a lot of experienced clinicians in the room. So, things to add. This is a good time for us to share, I think, and really look at, we want to develop everybody's practice. So if you have pieces to share, please, please. Those that are working, you have come up with something good. There's something that you're like, boy, I'm pretty smart that I thought of that. And we want to hear about that. We want to include that, and we want to share it. This is being streamed. We want to put it out to everybody that's listening. So, please.
Let me get the mic over to you.
Oh, sure.
So I'm not a clinician. How do you prevent someone like me who walks in your office and is, you mentioned fearful, you're messing with my brain waves. What if you train me wrong? And how do you reverse that? And how do you know? And how do you know what you're doing? You can't see what you're doing. Again, I know that you have the wave thing, but just that fear that people that don't know anything, how do you address that?
Want to start?
Yeah, well, we explained that this is why we need to take all this time for an initial intake, initial evaluation. We want to learn as much as possible what is going on with you. If we can provide a neurophysiological evaluation, QEEG, ERPs, and these are the tools that we're going to use. We have X amount of experience, right? And we need to learn also how you respond. And when you give us feedback of how you are responding, we're going to be able to address it in the direct way. So I think it's giving more information about evaluation tools and experience and resources so they can feel more comfortable and they can trust better in how we're doing. But it's a relationship that we have to build up, right? In trauma, it's very often, they don't trust you at all. They're like, and what is that, and what is that, and why this, and why here, and why that, and so I explain them everything, every single sensor, what is made of, why they are doing, why they are measuring, what is in the computer, why not. So when they are seeing that I'm really clear and transparent, explaining absolutely everything, they say, okay, I think they feel more comfortable and more trust. I don't know, want to add more?
Yeah, I think personally I probably practiced neurofeedback and then biofeedback for at least 10 years, being a licensed psychologist, but not being board certified. And somehow I made friends with the person who runs the board certification office. And she really kept, every year she would call me up on my birthday. You haven't gotten certified this year, have you? I was like, well, no, but I don't need it. And she's a lovely, lovely person. And she would say, well, you don't need it, but I think it would be good for you to have. Well, then finally, when I got involved with the NRBS, I felt like, oh, this is a little bit not good. I'm representing an organization. I'm not just representing myself, so I need to become board certified. So I did that. And I think the benefit of it for patients is that I'd rather go to a board certified surgeon than a surgeon who is not. I don't, that doesn't, there's always that story of, somebody was the bottom of their class, so somebody did the worst on the board certification test. We don't know if it was me. But I think if you have the endorsement of other organizations, and if they're affiliated with professional organizations, We have somebody in town, in our town, that had his license revoked, and he practices neurofeedback because he can. And people will call me up and say, well, I live closer to so-and-so. Do you think I should go to him? I'm like, well, I think you need to make that decision. Here are things you can look at. Look at their website. Look at whether they're board certified or not. Look at where they practice. See if you can speak to other patients of his. I have plenty of patients that are very eager to talk to other patients. Man, you get a mom and you help her kid sleep better, she'll talk to the whole universe. She wants everybody to come. We call it the Moms Club. Yeah.
Hi there. I have a practice in Plano, and one of the things that you were talking about a minute ago about compliance and getting the parents on board, for example, if you work with children. Something that I do that has worked very well for me and something that I've learned kind of the hard way through trial and error is, initially it was just about the kids and teenagers and building compliance and getting their parents on board, because it's difficult to explain initially, like that initial call about neurofeedback and biofeedback. You have to really hook them on that first call. Well, what I do now is I strongly urge, and really 99.9% of the time, I strongly urge the family to come in for an initial education training session with the patient. So whoever the patient is, if it's a child or teenager, and even if I'm working with an adult, I strongly urge the spouse or the significant other to also come in and experience that initial session, training session. So even if they're doing neurofeedback, my initial training session is heart rate variability. And I hook them up and I explain and discuss and talk, just like what you did, the HRV 101. That's what I do, and it really hooks them, because then the spouse, the parent, whatever, they're not the naysayer anymore at home. And then I've got 100% support. So it works really well to do a family session. Yes?
Hi, I own a private practice as well. I've been doing neurofeedback since 2001 and been in private practice for about 10 years. And one of the things, to answer your question, one of the biggest things that I find is to really do a good job of educating them about what this process of bio and neurofeedback is, especially with the neurofeedback. The first thing to understand is, I love their idea that these are sensors, not electrodes. There's nothing going into the brain. You really need to specify that. We're reading what's coming out, okay? And then the second part is that this is a training process. Yes, there is a potential you can overtrain. As she said, the 6-year-old might go for 20 minutes and you overtrain. But that's not going to stabilize for very long. It's going to tend to fall back to the set point. So the way I reassure people is one session isn't going to make a huge difference. It's a starting point. It lays a baseline. We need to start somewhere. You got to get the first day to the gym to get the weight loss. But we can't do much. They can't be undone. And it's all training 101, and we're just training what's coming out of the brain, not what's going into it. And that seems to help a lot of my clients to kind of settle down and take a deep breath. And then, as Christy and others have said, if that isn't enough, I work through biofeedback first, temperature training, heart rate variability, et cetera, and then we go to brain training, and that seems to help.
I think we've got 4 pretty seasoned clinicians here that probably have all come to the same point on our own through, as you said, maybe not such a good experience at one time. We learn from our negative experiences along the way as well. We're like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. I got to learn. And what's just makes me so happy is that, like at this conference, we're talking about these kinds of things, because I will tell you, you can go to a national conference and you are not going to hear this. You're not going to hear the nuts and bolts of, this is how I failed, this is what I learned, and I want to share that with you because it wasn't fun for me. So I would say, you've got 4 people here now all saying the same thing. bringing in the family. I don't do an evaluation report. So when we do quantitative EEGs, I say to people, please don't come back for your results alone. Please bring somebody. Heart rate variability, same thing. So, yeah. Must be something that everybody figured out one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, continue with why you have to disclose, with how all the procedures. It is dangerous. This is a great explanation. It is not, it's safe. There is not much that we can do in one session that we cannot do. So it's very important here to show evidence-based data, right? If they are looking for whatever disorder, you have to say the research is showing us this much. But we don't know this much, okay? And we have to be very clear what we know and what we don't know. We cannot be blind to the client, right? If it's a disorder that we don't have much research, so like evidence-based, we don't know much, but probably you have clinical experience in that disorder and you have treated 20 patients with that, so you feel very comfortable and say, research, we don't have much, but my experience is very rich, and I have treated X amount of cases like you, and I feel very comfortable doing this. So it is dangerous. It can really help you to give the evidence-based information, and also it will work in my case, right? And this is all that we have to disclose. All the criteria or the inclusion criteria, if they are going to be good candidates or not. This is a long story about the insurance. Do you want to talk about it?
Well, every state's different. So I understand Texas covers biofeedback for concussion. Sort of?
It's very. It's over here. Can I follow you and come over here? It helps the video folks out, that they can see us more clearly.
And while we're walking together, let's thank the video folks that we are getting this.
Good.
I've had quite the turbulent experience in Texas with being in network. So I got in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare, thinking that it would help. And Blue Cross Blue Shield would cover the CPT code 90876. If anyone's familiar with that? 90876. They said they would, and initially, kind of sometimes they would cover maybe the first 10 sessions or so. And so my clients were coming in twice a week. And then they decided, oh my goodness, I don't want to cover this anymore. So they just stopped paying. And this happened over and over and over again with my Blue Cross Blue Shield clients. So I said, well, the heck with this. This is not working because they're not paying me and I'm working for free. So I got out of network with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which was the best decision I ever made. Well, I also got in network with United Healthcare, and I still am with United Healthcare. They were a little easier to work with. But the CPT code they covered is 90901. They're starting to do the same thing with me right now. So after my clients have had so many sessions, 10, 15, they start going, wait, what are you doing? And then they decide it's experimental. All right, that's what Blue Cross Blue Shield was saying too. It was experimental, so we're not going to cover this anymore. So then I have to talk to my client. It's very awkward for me as a clinician. And I have to talk with my client and say, I'm so sorry, they're not covering anymore. Then my client gets mad and they call, and it's just this awkward process. So I'm now strongly considering getting out of network with United Healthcare. But those are the only two carriers that I've had this experience with.
It's different by each state. I have spent many, many hours on the phone with insurance companies and trying to help clients. I'm in several networks, I'm not in a couple. So like in Pennsylvania, I'm not in United Healthcare because they're very difficult to work with in Pennsylvania. It depends what state you're in. But all suffice to say, if you want, I'll be glad to send you my form that I spent many hours developing that I give to clients and have them call their insurance company. I started that in January of this year, and clients will come in and say, I called my insurance company, I was on the phone with them for an hour. Yes. And I think that's part of our responsibility is to not protect our clients. We're neurofeedback providers. Insurance, by and large, doesn't cover most of it. And that's, in a way, it's our fault because nobody's, approaching the legislature for that, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. However, it is the client's responsibility to know what their insurance covers. Okay? So if you like, I'll be very glad to share that form. They call up. It's got a step-by-step. You look through it. You modify it how you want. I don't care. I'm happy to share it. Last week, Joy Lunt did a presentation for AAPB. Did anybody listen to that? Okay. She was very thorough and very clear about how insurances work. Boy, there's a backstory that I never even dreamt of. But I believe, and I hope I'm not speaking incorrectly here, I believe AAPB is actually going to offer that for free because Joy's takeaway message was, if we don't bill the insurance companies for 90901, they don't recognize that we're doing it. And if they don't recognize that we're doing it, then they don't recognize that it's something anybody wants, and so they really don't care. So that's very different from what we have done in our office. We have actually billed people for an office visit and then confirmed that their insurance does not cover for biofeedback, and we charge them out of pocket for the biofeedback. If you're going to do that, you have to have them sign a waiver, because once in a while you're going to get a client that's going to call their insurance company and say, do you know that the SADARs are charging me a copay plus an additional fee? And then what happens is the insurance company calls you up and says, hey, your client complained, we want to verify that you're not charging them extra. And I say, I am. I'm going to send you the form that they signed where I explained to them this is not covered and it's additional fee. And the way I explain it to the clients, if you go in my office and I do a therapy session with you and then I take you into the other office and I paint your nails, your insurance is not going to cover it. And that's how your insurance thinks of biofeedback right now. Sorry. So you have to paint, you have to cover, you have to pay for what I do that your insurance company doesn't pay. But Joy's message was, no, bill it. Bill it, get it rejected, so the insurance companies know. I am quite sure AAPB will be giving that out for free. Those that listened live are paying for it because we got CEs, but they want that message out. Any questions on that? Because, boy, that billing's tricky.
Okay.
Okay, so here's just something. You can have the slides. This isn't a way to explain to clients. The background picture here was chosen very precisely. Start with something easy. I don't have a head on there with sensors. I don't have an EEG cap on there. That's a little bit scary if you don't know what you're talking about. But two sensors on my fingers, I guess I could do that. So start explaining very easily and then work your way up.
Well, explain, of course, that there is a lot of modalities that we can use and regulate physiology, and what is the application of each of them, what are the things that we have to begin with, what is the purpose of combination of this, right? Like, really explain then the broad umbrella of the interventions and the reasons and the applications.
Again, you can take any of these pictures. They're not copyrighted. Print them up. You can just pull them off. A lot of people are visual. You know, they're visual, they're auditory. Give it to them both ways. But people get confused. Well, what's biofeedback? What's neurofeedback? Neurofeedback is biofeedback. Let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
To the
Yeah.
picture.
Oh, mine? Okay. This is just our explanation of neurofeedback. So brainwaves have patterns. They have rhythms. I draw it for them. I pull out a piece of paper. I'm like, look, we call these squiggles. And if I draw them like this, they look nicer than if I draw them like this. If yours are too big, that's different than if they're too small. You could take out a crayon and do it. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated. But we want the squiggles, we want the patterns to go in a rhythm that's best for you. If you're an artist, it's really good to have super high alpha when you close your eyes. Not really good if you're a trauma patient. So we don't want to just train so that you're like everybody else. We want to train you so that you can do more of what you want to do. And ultimately, you know what we want to do? We want to train you so that you can access what you need to access at the right time. So right now, we're all capable of walking or running, but none of us are. Because that really wouldn't be very good if somebody was standing up in the aisle running right now. Okay? But we all know we can. And that's what we want to do with your brain. We want it to be able to sleep when it is supposed to sleep, focus when it's supposed to focus, and drift when it's supposed to drift. Okay, examples. Again, I think for some of you, for many of you, this is going to be very redundant. So add your own examples. I appreciate that y'all are contributing. You say it a different way, somebody else in the room is going to hear it better than the way we say it. But physical exercise, you know, again, I use my violin as a way of saying, you know, you need to practice, you need to do, I can't just go practice once a week. If I do, then it's like I'm starting all over again. And guess what? If I have a bad teacher once in a while in there, I want to try a different teacher, they're not going to make me any worse than I am because I'm going to figure it out. This is where the patient relationship comes into play. I am smart enough to know if my violin teacher knows what they're talking about or not. And I'm not going to stay with them if I figure they don't know what they're talking about. And we want our patients to do the same thing.
Yes, try to use examples that relate to them, right? So they can understand it better in their own experience. Explain them that there are different rhythms that represent different states that are related with different dysfunctions or dysregulation of circuits. And this is very important that they understand that this is what we're going to train and the meaning of the frequency. So actually in the charts, usually when we record a QEEG, this is part of our results. Before explaining the maps, we go over each of the frequency bands so they have very clear what they mean. And also because there are words that they will hear during the training, right? We're doing alpha, beta, what that means. So this is part of the education.
To add to that, there's somebody, I do consulting to help people with practice development, and there's somebody that I was working with. And one of the things I do is say, pretend I'm a new patient. I'm going to sit down and you give me a first session. And this person looked me up and turned on the computer and started running it. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we doing? As if I'm a patient. No. And he says, oh, just sit back and relax. We'll do it. It'll be fine. And I was like, wait a minute. What are we doing? Are you doing anything with my brain? I heard of brain waves. You don't need to know about that. Let's just go. So we had a long way to go. We kind of had a couple of struggles there. People want to know. People want to know, and they deserve to know.
Yeah, always use the word learning. Neurofeedback is learning. Okay, so always use the word learning. Self-regulate is also a good word to use, linked to biofeedback, where it's a learning procedures is based in basic learning theories. And why some brains respond different to another? Because we learn different, right? And this is exactly what we would like to understand better. And even that we kind of predict few fundamentals with the neurophysiological testing, how fast or how slow we will have results. But in reality, we don't know how fast or slow will respond until we start doing the process. And it depends on the learning process. Different speeds, number of sessions. You will hear different stories from different providers. The most common is not minimum of 15 or 20 to 60. Some people do even more, of course, depending on the severity. So this is really depends on the clinician and their experience. You will see how fast I will see the changes, right? So what I usually say to the patients is, most of the times you will see some changes between session 5 or 10. Definitely by session 10, I really need you to see a light, even that it's intermittent light, but we need to have a light, that we're going in some direction. We're not seeing any light. We need to review what we're doing, right? But this is most common, how fast they will see the changes in this term. Some people is very sensitive. They have changes in one session, right? And hopefully good changes. And they have to be adjustments of the protocol during the training, depending on how they are responding. And there are ways that we can speed up the learning process, adjusting our protocols and procedures. And always you need to reevaluate, right? And see, use as many tools. When you have an initial intake, not only if you use QEEG, but clinical scales, standardized clinical scales. You always, never just hook the client off and you don't have a baseline of what they started. Whatever you are treating, is depression, run a Beck inventory, or anxiety scales, like whatever standardized scales that you have, more measures of what are you doing, how they are changing. But something else? Here? No? Here about the number of sessions, you will read some authors that they are talking about 200 sessions, right? And yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we don't know. I mean, how much our brain can change and how much our brain can learn. Okay, we know our brain is plastic, we will keep learning. But just understanding the basis of learning and in the area of neurorehab, we know when we're exposed to new stimuli and new learning, our physiology tends to change pretty fast at the beginning, and then we reach a plateau, right? So why we can do that? We need to switch the protocols and do something new and different so the brain keeps learning. And when we think we reach like a maximum about the switching that we can do, we definitely need breaks to consolidate the learning. And if you continue doing it, you won't give this time to have the consolidation of the circuits and the learning and apply it in real life, so this really continues happening. So breaks are very important instead of continuous training, non-stop training.
Okay, so will it work for me? It works for many people. It works for most people. But I need your help. I need your help. I need you to manage your sleep. I need you to work on managing your electronics. I need you to work on managing your diet. I need you to work on managing your exercise, your physical activity. That's a tall order. So we don't need you to do that all at once. Let's start somewhere. These are all the things that you can do to contribute. Where would you like to start? Let's pick the one that's easiest for you. Could you go to sleep an hour earlier? Or a half hour earlier? Could we start there? So there's a lot of negotiating. And as Deanna said, but I want to go backwards because I said no, but I meant yes. So the feedback, wasn't there feedback? Reevaluation. Reevaluation we think of as, maybe doing assessments, but we have to reevaluate all the time. Every time somebody comes in, we go over their rating scales with them. And people get tired of it. And I know that. And I'll say, I know you don't think this is important, but I'm going to ask you to give me your ratings again. So we'll do rating scales something like, I'll make things up for a child, number of meltdowns per day. Or as well as, we try to do 5. So it might be intensity of meltdowns. Might be how long it takes to get to bed. And every time they come in. Okay, let's go over those ratings again. So how many meltdowns did we have since you were last here? We had 2. And we'll mark that down. If they were here 3 days ago, we mark that down as 3/2. In the last 3 days, they had 2 meltdowns. On the average, how long did it take your son to get to bed? Oh, about 30 minutes. Let's double check. You didn't sound right. You didn't sound confident about that. What do you have in your book? Let's look back in your book. Oh, I forgot my book. Oh, good. That's a good thing to help me remember, to remind you. You don't want to reprimand them, but it's like, oh, good, that helped me. Thank you. I'm going to remind you.
Yeah, there are different tracking logs that you can individualize for your client, for your practice, and also identify what is easy for them, right? For trauma client, if I give them a checklist of 20 questions that they cannot even understand what we're asking, of course, it's one line, right? And yeah, you need to individualize how they keep the track for everybody. I like to explain a lot about different regions of the brain and different functions of the brain when we explain if this will work for them or not. And so, well, I mean, you have a reading issue, and we have an area of the brain that is particularly, or the priority of this region of the brain is to learn how to read and write, right? So if we find this correlation with your brain map, we know exactly what is the function and the frequencies that we need to regulate for this difficulty that you have in life. So I use a lot the Brodmann areas for education and explaining them how precise we can be, and they will make more sense for them.
Does anybody here use the Othmer method? Okay. Does everybody know what the Othmer method is? Does anybody want me to go over it? Go over it? Okay. So Siegfried and Sue Othmer and their son Kurt have a company, and there might be other people that are partners or owners in the company, called EEG Info, eeginfo.com. Sue was very involved with EEG spectrum back, I don't know, I'm going to say back in the 80s, late 80s maybe. Maybe somebody can correct me. Does that sound about right? And Sue they actually came into Neurofeedback because they had a son that had epilepsy, and they got involved in that regard with Barry Sturman and with Howard Lightstone, who ended up owning EEG Spectrum, that is now called EEG Education and Research. Okay, so Sue is a clinician, and she's a very intuitive clinician. And at that time, the original training for epilepsy was CZ. That's it, train at CZ. And my understanding, and if Sue ever gets hold of this video that's being produced and she wants to correct me, I would be glad to have her change it. But my understanding is, or anybody else in the room, is that Sue started to say, I think we can train a little left and we can train a little right. And people in the field would say, no, you can't. You shouldn't do that. Sue's very intuitive. I've actually been trained by her. She did a very nice job with me. She honed right in on what I needed. But the field was fairly critical of that. There's no research, you shouldn't do it. And so that. But then what happened was the research came, and the research supported. Attention left, emotions right. And then Sue said, I think we can train at T3 and T4 we can get to the temporal lobes and we can get to other things. And the same story happened. The field said, no, there's no research. And Sue said, I'm going to do it. And she did it. And then later the research supported her. And then Sue said something else. And the field said no. And then finally Sue said, I've had it with you guys. I don't need you. I'm leaving. And she and her family went off and they made their own company. And they partnered with, in fact, the engineer that we're partnered with HBI, with Bernard, does their equipment. He's in Switzerland, and he's, from what I understand, an excellent engineer. His former job was he worked on the EU satellite system, and he had a son who who needed neurofeedback training, and he saw our amplifiers, and he was like, I can make a better amplifier, and he did. And so he made the amplifiers for the OFMers, which are EEG info. Their method is symptom-based, no assessments. So symptom-based is, first of all, do no harm, and then start on the right side of the brain, if you need quieting and calming, or interhemispherically, if you have instability, headache, migraines, sleep disturbances, not falling asleep, but interrupted sleep, epilepsy, things like that. And they have not published research, which is why they're not accepted by BCIA, because BCIA is research-based. But they have done studies. They're not published. And they report good results, and I have used their systems. I own a couple of their systems, and for some people, it works very well. But, so as we're talking here about assessment, they still require assessments, but they're not measured assessments. They're symptom-based assessments. How did you sleep? What's your personal information that you can give me about how you did?
Yeah.
Anything, if anybody can add to that, because I do not want to misrepresent them. They've been very good contributors to the field.
Yeah, and we understand many clinicians don't have access to QEEG. It's expensive. It needs a lot of resources to get trained, understand, interpretation, etc. But we know it's very valuable if we really want to help this patient in a significant way. Definitely, with severe cases, you need to understand better and better and in detail what is going on in this brain, instead of taking the risk of doing symptom-based, right? I've been working with people that has been doing symptom-based, and now they are switching to QEEG. And I asked them, what you will train if you wouldn't see the QEEG? What's your decision based in that? Well, I will do X and Y, and this is what is my plan. And I showed them the cue. I said, you will know, you will do exactly the opposite is needed. You will reinforce frequencies that are already high, and you will increase the symptoms, and you won't help these patients. So I think, even that I know it helps a lot of people, and it's at certain level acceptable, this type of practice, it will help us as a discipline to be more reliable in neurophysiological information, to be more evident, to have more evidence of what we're doing. And all these symptom-based protocols, we have a higher risk to not have effect or have side effects. And this is why at some point the discipline was very not respectful, right? And this doesn't work, and we don't think this is a good intervention. So I think this is helping us to go to another level. And yes, it requires more, but it's worth it. This is what we want to be. This is what we want to provide and make a difference. So this is the objective of this new project. Are we going to talk about this now?
We'll wait till the end and see if they want to see.
Okay.
Or, I don't care.
Okay, well, Well, we have been working in a project to go even higher than just QEEG evaluation. We're trying to integrate ERP in the neurophysiological evaluation. So we're collaborating with the Human Brain Index database, and we are trying to help more clinicians to offering the interpretation and recommendations of the QEEG and ERP so they can provide more, not only neurofeedback, because the ERPs give us, as I mentioned, another level of neurophysiological understanding, and we can recommend other therapies that can be more successful for this particular client. So, and of course, well, Andrew Mueller and his group, they have been doing this research for how long? 10 years, and they are trying to find the biomarkers of the ADHD, right? And they are, yeah, very close, having a lot of data, very interesting data.
My husband and I have lots of conversations about this because my husband he's a psychologist and we've worked together in this for ages. It seems like there's lots of husband and wife teams in this field. It's like I said, it's a cult. But he is somebody who doesn't like to go with the status quo. He doesn't like to be pushed by establishment. He doesn't like to follow rules. And so when we first started, like I said, his first neurofeedback system, I think, cost $12,000. Computers were still expensive. It was impossible to get EEGs. Who owned that? And so we did not do them. And so for a long time, he would say, we don't need to do, the QEEGs rather, he would say, we don't need to do them. We used to do fine without doing them. Well, that's true. That's true. We did pretty good. But now do we have an ethical obligation, if we know about this, if we know that we can get this additional information, where lies our ethical obligation to be able to convey to the patient why we're making the choices and what other choices are available to them? It's a tough answer. There's, not everybody can afford to have a QEEG system in their office. Somebody had mentioned earlier, not every patient can afford it. That's true, but I want to tell you, even my patients that are on medical assistance get their hair streaked, get their nails done, and go to Disneyland. And I don't know how they do it. But most of them, I figure, are going into debt to do it. And if you're going to go into debt for something, this is a pretty good thing to go into debt for. That's my opinion, but they need to choose. But I need to choose, am I going to offer the service without the backup that I feel I need? And sometimes I don't even feel like a Q is necessary. So I don't want you to think I'm always like, okay, you're here, good, thanks, let's do a Q. That's not the case. If somebody is so dysregulated, like, let's use the Ackerman method and let's just quiet your brain down, or let's do HRV and calm your system down. Let's meet you where you are. But if you have these expectations of me to help you, you also need to let me use the tools that I have available to help you with.
Okay.
Yeah, you,
Is you?
me.
Is you?
I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Okay, so I can talk. So I think we mentioned all of this, right? All the things that they can help us. So I always said, this is a teamwork. We're only going to help you in one direction, but you have all these lists that you need to help us. And more, as Christy was saying about with children, to be the two parents present and compliant with all the things that they need to work at home. Because it's very, very important. Nutrition, and a big advocate about nutrition. Many, many times, if this kid is not eating healthier, we don't even start the procedure. They are going to eat just junk and pizza. I don't think it's worth it. We won't be able to help them. So it's very important to get very deep in nutrition and explain them the importance. This is neuroplasticity. We are going to help to produce new neurons, connections, and change the chemistry of the brain. And we don't give the ingredients for this to happen, the amino acids, and the minerals and everything that the brain needs, it won't happen. It just won't happen. And I have very clear cases of patients that are following healthy diets and patients that know. I can see the rate so different, how they can change. So actually, when I have very good clients doing the nutrition and I see speeding up the improvements, I know probably half of it was just the nutrition, and the other half was the neurofeedback. So I'm very, very strict with the diet because it really makes a difference.
What are some basics that you recommend?
Well, just
Just for
have,
anybody.
you just have balanced meals. We should have a slide of that. Have balanced meals. Try to reduce the just high carbohydrates meals, right? And more breakfast. Anybody knows about breakfast, how important it is. But balance it with healthy protein in 3 meals a day. And have snacks. Don't live without food longer than 4 hours. Always healthy snacks, fruits, nuts, other combination of healthy snacks. Try to avoid or eliminate what we know. What I always tell them, I have a list of recommendations, nutritional recommendations, is this is nothing that you don't know. This is not black science or a secret. This is common sense. We should be eating like this, everybody. So this is not something new. I'm not telling you something brand new. So try to avoid what we know is not good, excessive sugar, excessive salt, junk food, and try to reduce the highly intolerant or allergenic foods like gluten and dairy. And just with children, they say, well, but they cannot have a candy or a chocolate. I say, no, it's not that they can't. Just don't have it at home in their table for every time they want to snack chocolate, right? Or junk. Just have them in a special occasion where they go out for the weekend, where like a very outside the house, that it's not something that it's in the regular diet. Definitely soda, right? And highly sugar drinks. And I do recommend some supplements, basic supplements that you probably all know, like omega-3s, vitamin D, and multimineral. And it will be ideal to have levels of vitamin D before you recommend vitamin D. But, I mean, almost everybody is low in vitamin D, so just dosage for the... It will be very nice if you can have support of a nutritionist so they can guide you very well in what type of supplements to give. Well, you know, there are a whole nutritional base intervention that can go along with these conditions.
If you're licensed and your license doesn't allow you to prescribe nutrition, you can't. So, but you can say to people something like, there's a lot of information on the internet about omega-3s and how they help your brain health. Here are some websites you can go to. There is, in fact, a lot of information about omega-3s, and then people will come up with, oh, I found an article that said you shouldn't take omega-3s. Omega-3s for brain health is different than omega-3s for heart health. And so for heart health, there are some instances where it's not helpful. If somebody has a pacemaker, if somebody is on a diuretic, if somebody, and that's not even heart health, or if somebody's on, anything like Lipitor or statins, please don't you be the one to tell them to take omega-3s. Much easier to say, it's easy to look on the internet and look up information about how omega-3s are helpful, and I suggest that you ask your doctor if there are any contraindications that you shouldn't be able to take it.
Yeah, they can refer to their general practitioners because these are very general supplements, and they can ask their doctor or have a nutritional consultation that can help.
On nutrition, here's a suggestion for everybody. Leave here today and go to McDonald's. Okay? Go to McDonald's and buy a cheeseburger and French fries and put it away and pull it out in a month and it will look the same as my McDonald's looks now, and I've had it for 3 years. And that's, I can knock a kid off of McDonald's in 2 minutes. I pull it out of the drawer and I say, this is 3 years old, and not a single fly went after it. Not a fly, not a maggot, nothing. It's sitting in my drawer. Would you like a bite? Okay. Because there's so many preservatives in there, it stays preserved forever. And the paper is getting ripped, but the burger looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, and actually, now that you mentioned McDonald's, I remember a client that I was seeing in your office. This kid arrived, his prize to come to session was, let's have McDonald's before your neurofeedback session. So the parents came in, the kid like smelling McDonald's. I was right there in the office, McDonald's. So I started asking more about the diet of this kid, right? And how many fruits a day he has. And the kid, and I asked the kid, not the parents, how many fruits a day you have? 8-year-old. He's thinking very hard, and he's like, I think I have a banana like a month ago. So that was really scary. I need to pull in the parents, and I was like, this is, I mean, the case is serious. His brain is really very, very dysregulated. We need to do something else. And I teach them just a few things. Start offering some fruits. Just begin with that. And they start having 1 apple a day. And little by little, and they start switching. And definitely when this kid was able, I wouldn't say ideal, healthy diet, but eating more variety of foods, less junk and processed foods, this kid did better. So it's really, really very dramatic to see. Exercise is very important that the people, if possible, they are physically active, just because of all the knowledge we have, how exercise can promote neuroplasticity. So it will just enhance what we are. And electronics, Angelica is a big advocate about avoiding electronics,
We
especially
don't allow
before.
it in the waiting room. There are actually these things that you can buy, cases that you can put your phone in that like prevent it. And now I'm like getting crazy about the EMFs and what they do to little kids' brains. Again, if you want an article, I'll send you an article on EMFs. But the brain needs to relax. You train. Deanna was talking about consolidation. So training, doing anything, doing heart rate variability, doing EMG, learning how to relax your muscles, doing neurofeedback, and then you leave and you go on your cell phone. Why did you even come? It's like going to the gym and then going out and buying ice cream. Who does that? So we actually don't allow electronics in the waiting room for patients. Now, I don't feel like I can tell parents that are driving their kids they can't go on electronics. I can't be like the total boss of the electronic world. But for people that are training, we have a sheet that we give them at the beginning of training. These are some things that are going to help your training, and we're going to ask you to comply with them. So even kids get in the car, and on the way home, they're watching video games. Why did you drive an hour here to do that? Go, drive home and listen to music or something. So, yeah.
Sleep, try to advocate for good sleep. Training, neurofeedback, it requires sleep to consolidate the learning. Everything that was learned in the neurofeedback session, it will happen, all the changes, it will happen during sleep. So actually, if your client has the flexibility to have it in their schedule, I recommend, if possible, to nap after the training. Or if this evening, go straight to bed. So it really helped to consolidate the learning. So definitely the day that they did the training, hopefully they have a good night of sleep. And they try to take care of having more hours of sleep. Very important, the structure at home and school. So many, many times we need to do family intervention, consultation with the parents to see how their strategies for raising the children and educating the children, so they really understand whatever they are doing is helping in the pathway, because many of their education resources is actually the opposite. So we need to learn how they are doing. And this many, many times, it takes a lot of effort from the parents. So parents need to be involved if the children is a client, and it's hard for them, yeah? Sometimes they bring the kid, and the kid is the problem, here is the kid, I run. Sometimes they send an Uber. We don't even see the parents. They were like, no, this is not how it works. Just the kid is a reflection of many things that is happening in the dynamic of the house. So we need to do an integrative approach with the parents, and very important also with the school. Many schools doesn't know how to help them. Yeah, and this is very good. Some teachers reach us and they said, what do you recommend me to do with this kid? Because I don't know. So it's really very good to have everybody connected, good communication, and everybody has the same goals. And other therapies. Neurofeedback, biofeedback, it's an enhancer of anything else they are doing in terms of other therapies. It's not instead of other therapy. Okay, I'm doing neurofeedback. I'm just talking about neuro rehab world. Oh, I'm doing neurofeedback. I stopped doing speech therapy. So no, it's the opposite. You're doing neurofeedback, you need to do more speech therapy, because this is how we will help for speech therapy to be more productive and efficient. The same with trauma. Doing neurofeedback doesn't mean you won't do therapy. You need to do it. I just explained that this is like it will help us to speed up the process with other therapies. It's not instead of. So it's actually the time to spend more time, resources, and money in doing more therapies, so they can move forward faster.
Okay. Are you starting to get the picture? You got to lay a really good foundation. So, like I said, that clinician that I was working with didn't have any foundation, and I probably go to the opposite end. You should have a website, a resource, or a website that you direct people to. That's okay. For the longest time, I used Mike Cohen's website. I don't have a website, go to this one. It's good. So I know this stuff all takes time. You're working a lot. You're saving, come to conferences. You can't do everything. Most people can't. But we want to provide personal experiences. Tell them your own story. How did it work for you? If that's not comfortable for you, you can tell them without revealing information about other clients and how their progress went, or stories that I've told you. I went to this conference and somebody told me this. So find your level of comfort as a clinician, but you want to help people make the decision about whether they want to pursue any kind of biofeedback training or not. Updated articles. I still refer to ISNR, has a bibliography. It's probably not totally updated, but it's pretty darn good. Corey Hammond started it years ago, and it's sorted by, I want to say symptoms. So anxiety, seizures, everything's on there. What's SMBN?
This is the Mexican book.
Oh, it's a Mexican book.
Ignore it.
Deanna made the PowerPoint. I said, I'll finish it up. And I'm like, what's that?
This was for a lecture in Spanish, so I forgot.
Okay. For clinicians, the Thompsons have put a lot of effort into the neurofeedback book. Now they've refined it. Man, it's a heavy read, but it's got everything in it. And there's zillions of books out there. I read the Swingle book on the way out here because I had a layover and I could finish a book. So you just pick up stuff little by little. But there's books for clients. There's Paul Swingle who wrote the book? Oh gosh, I just have them in my office. I pull them out. I can't even think of the names of them. There's a book on ADHD. I don't know. I don't know the names of them. I have them handy. I can't think of them. It's a green book. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Besides.
It's this color green on the front. But at any rate, I can get you that list. Send them to other websites. Have brochures. Have stuff in your waiting room. BCIA or AAPB, I'm not sure which one it is. ISNR, they all have brochures that you can buy. Put them out. People will ask you questions about them. You don't have to explain everything. They'll come to you with questions.
Oh, and something very important about testimonies that has been very useful lately. There are clients that when they finish their process and they are very happy with the results, they are open to, whenever you have a new client, that they want to talk with a client that experiences, ask them to call. So I give them the number, and they talk to a real person that just went through the process. So this is a very good information that they can get, not only from the clinician. Okay, so different clinics has different procedures or process. What is first, what is followed. So this is what we, more or less, we do the same. We first have the first interview. You can do it differently, part with the phone, part, well, of course, always in person. But always you need to spend some time, as needed, really, to explain all education, explain all the procedures, answer all the questions, so everything is very clear. Initial evaluation, it includes different things for different clinics, but of course, in my case, I'm able to do a full medical evaluation, neurological evaluation, neuropsych eval. You can do it as small or as large as you like, but definitely include the main symptoms that you are targeting. QEEG evaluation, here we need ERP. And with all this information, we produce initial reports. So we spend a session explaining the findings of the report. This is what it looks, a puzzle. This is you. This is your clinical symptoms. This is your subjective measures. These are your objective measures, your neurophysiological evaluation. This is what we propose you to do. This is the treatment plan. We predict that this amount of sessions will be able to help you in this frequency, this protocol, this protocol, this protocol, and these are all the other recommendations that you have to follow along. So these reports are pretty extensive. Sometimes how many pages? 35 or who knows? So really spend the time for them to understand as much as they can. Explanation of the findings, individualizations of packages, I think we explained that, and adjust the prices if needed. We talk about insurance. Do you need to talk more about it? No? Okay. We talk about this, the symptom checklist. All the symptoms in different domains as you want to.
We have
track.
these hanging up in the waiting room,
Yeah.
and we ask the patients to fill them out before their session starts. So it's a lot of paper, but some people just skip over them, and we start to realize that, but some people take them very seriously, and we want to let them know that we're serious about the information that we need.
And it's very important to track symptom changes because with neurofeedback, the progress fluctuates a lot, right? They see improvements, they don't, they see improvements, they don't, and they can have this, and this is normal. This is normal progress. So whenever something's going good, that's great, we're all happy, we have all documented. We have a bad day, something is going down, and they will come very upset with you. Say, I'm not seeing the results, this is not happening, I'm still having this issue. I say, wait a minute, we're in progress. Last week you were here. Yes, we have a fluctuation, but it's fine, we will go back again. And every time we go up, we'll be higher. So this is what's happening. And if they don't see that we keep record of it, they will forget the good days. They will come and tell you only the bad day. If it's a mother with a difficult kid, they will come and tell you only how hard it was to drag them to the session, right? And this is all they know. But we keep record. Look, he has been sleeping for 4 days. And you got a good note from the teacher. So you need to remind them because they easily forget the good things. So keeping track is very important so they can visualize it and they say, okay, that's true. Good things are happening. And more things.
We've been talking about the therapeutic relationship all along, but we put more slides in because we really need to stress how important it is. That doesn't mean you have to be available all times a day. I think it was since I was here, somebody was saying that they don't answer emails or something like that outside of business hours, and their patients know that. That doesn't mean they're not cared about, but you need to take care of yourself as well. But on the other hand, when somebody comes in, again, this is routine for us. I love my job. I'm lucky I get to go there every day, but it's not the most fun place for most people to go to. So what we contribute to their being with us is very, very important. We care about them. Now, it's interesting because my daughter is a personal trainer, and she knows much more about her clients than I know about my patients in this sense. She knows where they get their nails done. She knows where they went out to dinner. She knows all their social stuff. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know if my patients go out to dinner. Like, that's interesting. But what I want to know is how are they feeling in their skin and how am I helping them feel as well as they can in their skin when they come. We have coffee, tea, water in the waiting room. I would love to burn essential oils, but we have enough people that are sensitive, so we don't do that. What are other things that we do? I mean, we want to make it nice for them. We have tissues everywhere. Okay, I spend a fair amount of money on tissues. It's okay. They're not that expensive. I mean, buy a lot of tissues, lots of boxes. We want them there. We want the people to feel comfortable. We actually do have, one of our staff has a therapy dog, and I can't tell you how much patients love that. That's, 1 out of 1 million doesn't want the therapy dog in the room.
Yeah, something that Christy was mentioning, that this is very important, that she encouraged all the clients to come and visit the office to get all the information. And this is so important, so they really see you, they meet you, they get your vibes and energy and everything they need to feel, that they will feel comfortable in your hands, right? So all the empathy and all the things that we provide in this first consultation is so important, so they can feel comfortable, that they will trust you, and they see that you care about them, right? And when they see that you are really caring and really listening and really spending the time, and I mean, these people come from the world where 15 minutes medical consultation and they didn't look at them, right? So, oh wow, they are listening to me, they are taking care of me, so all this is very valuable and very important to have a successful effect.
Do you know, if you go to Home Depot, try this. Walk through you have Home Depot, right? I mean, everybody has Home Depot. Is it from Texas? I don't know. Walk around Home Depot for 10 minutes. 5 people will say hello to you. They're trained really good. Huh? Really? Oh, by us? Oh my goodness. You cannot walk in Home Depot that 5 people don't come up to you and ask you if they can help you. They make you feel so welcome there. Philadelphia is pretty big. Yeah. Anyway, okay, bad example. But when somebody walks in our office, whoever's sitting at our front desk, For the first time especially, hi, nice to see you. Did you find us okay? Did you get here okay? We were waiting for you. No matter what you're doing, okay? You don't have to jump up and give them the paperwork right away. I'm in the middle of something. Can I show you where the waiting room? It's right over here. Would you mind waiting there for me? Because I'm looking forward to showing you some things. It goes a long way. It goes a long way. How many times you pay attention, like Deanna said, when you walk in a doctor's office and they're like, they don't even look at you. That can go a real long way. So that's part of what your placebo effect is.
Yes, we know with biofeedback, neurofeedback, we have a huge placebo effect, right? And this is related with the relationship with the therapist. And how much it is or not, well, this is something that we have to explore in research. But, and not only neurofeedback, I mean, we have very decent research about a medical treatment, how the medical doctor prescribe you your regular medications, if they really take care of you and talk to you and look at you, and you will have better response to taking that medication than if not. So this is very clear data. And for us, it's even more important. So the relationship with the therapist, if it's a technician doing the session, they need to build up this relationship. And I'm very against of the offices where they run simultaneous sessions with one technician, so they just hook them up and they disappear and they review it somewhere else, and they are just alone with the screen. You are losing probably 50% of the effectiveness of the session because they need somebody beside you guiding you what you are doing. Are you doing right or not? It is working, not. And all these will help to have better effectiveness of the session. So this is huge, the relationship with whoever is running the session. And well, especially in trauma, because in trauma we need to be aware if they are dissociating or not, or they are having flashbacks, or many risks that can happen during a session that we need to be taking care. More?
Oh, sorry.
Well,
I
it's
was
just more
thinking
about
what
the
you were saying, so I'll add to that. So we do that too. When I visited Andrew Mueller for the first time, he actually has, or he doesn't have his clinic anymore, but he had an office here and then a window here and an office there. And then when we built our new office, I thought, oh, he's so good, I'm going to model after him. And we built a window in there, and we never used it because I just could not pull myself away to be like, I'm going to go check on this. I'm going to go be with this person while you're here training. But there is somebody I know, it was one of my teachers, and that is how he runs his sessions, and he gets very good success. But what I'm also going to tell you is, he'll go in Sunday morning at 9 o'clock to train somebody. Everybody has his personal phone number. You can call him at 11 o'clock at night. So, boy, you know he cares. So that he's got ADHD. And I would say that if he would have said it if he was in the room. So he can't just sit in a room with somebody for 45 minutes. And he has trained. He's got ADHD, and that's the end of the story. So that's how he manages it. So, you know, what we're saying, I hope, while it might sound very pedantic, that you also understand, we understand, put your own personality and your own heart and soul into it and do what's, if it's not right for you, it's not going to be right for the patient. So you while we're giving you guidelines, you have to find exactly what's right for you and how it's going to work.
And also, if they have a clinician assigned or a technician assigned, try to keep it consistent, right? Try not to switch it all the time and have different people, because this relationship needs to build up. And of course, if for one session or so it has to be switched, the patient needs to know in advance that they won't see their technician or therapist, because they need to approve it. Do you want to come? Your clinician is not here today, or we postpone the session. Because it's very difficult that they show up and say, somebody else is going to see you, and I don't know them, and how I'm going to feel with them. And even that we have very standard procedures on how to run a session, everybody has different things, right? And these different things can, change the experience. So, well, this is what I was saying, right? That even in medicine, all therapeutic approaches, the more you will be able to take care of the people if you care. Okay, I think we reached the end.
Yeah, so I think what we would do here is we'll entertain questions. Is there more that needs to be done for the society? And if you like, we did finish a little early, the trauma went a little bit fast.
Yeah.
We have an evaluation, and we can go through a functional EEG evaluation. So, y'all, I'll leave that up to you, Art, to kind of.
We've been going for about, an hour and 45 minutes. If you want to take 5 minutes, think of some questions and come back, you'll want to do that? Let's do that. 5-minute break, come back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, let's take a break. Good. That would be good.
We're going to play a video during the break that's just an advertisement that we've got from a sponsor. So BSTX does not endorse anybody's particular equipment, but we're going to play this during the break so that you can have some information about what they offer.
I'm Dr. Mary Tracy. I'm the Director of Northern California Neurotherapy. We've been in operation for about 6 years in Davis, California, and we provide diagnostic assessment and neurofeedback and biofeedback training for psychological, emotional, and brain trauma disorders, everything from depression, anxiety, and attention deficit disorder to more serious problems like traumatic brain injury.
My name is Kelly Nelson, and I am a licensed marriage family therapist. I am Mary Tracy's colleague. We work together, we teach together, we consult on cases together, we do training together. It's been really enjoyable to move into this area of work.
Like any conventional medical process, you have to start with a diagnosis before you can do a treatment. And our diagnostic assessment involves placing electrodes on the scalps of people's heads and recording brain activity. We record the brain activity and then we process it digitally with very sophisticated software that gives us an indication of dysregulation in the brain. We have these huge databases of so-called neurotypical brain activity. So we have a control group basically, and we statistically compare the patient's brain function to that of sometimes age-matched, sometimes just general population-matched neurotypical controls. Whenever we find something that flags high or low, those areas become targeted areas for treatment. And the treatment involves neurofeedback, which is a learning paradigm. We use videos, video games, and music as the media. And what we do is have someone sit in a very comfortable chair. We record brain activity from the dysregulated area of their brain. And the client's brain controls the variables in the video game or the video, for example. So let's say we're treating a child with attention deficit disorder, and the child has very slow activity in the frontal parts of the brain, which is what causes distractibility, inattentiveness, inability to focus. And we record that activity, and whenever the brain spontaneously produces a faster rhythm, which is associated with interest in the video game or interest in the video screen becomes very large. As soon as the kid goes into the slower ADD activity, the video screen shrinks down. So we have a positive reward and a negative reward. And of course, the brain wants to keep the screen big. So what it learns to do very, very quickly, even before the patient really understands what's going on, is it starts to produce more of that faster activity. And we know that if it keeps producing that faster activity, neurons that fire together wire together. That's the basis of neuroplasticity in the brain. And so what you come up with at the end of a 30 or 40-minute session is a communication network in the brain that's much more efficiently wired for attention, focus, and control. And as you reward this on a weekly basis over 8 to 10 sessions or so, you can actually rewire the brain, and I'm using air quotes here because we don't have actual physical evidence of that, and yet we know that kids will function much better with focus and attention. What we see is that this operant conditioning paradigm actually functions to help the person focus and to attend and to do better judgment, better control, better impulse control over time. And so the operant conditioning paradigm utilizes the fact that this brain can produce activity that is consistent with focus and attention, and we reward that every single time it happens with the neurofeedback training. So the first thing we start with is a 30-minute free consult, and during that consult we will do a clinical history. We will document, sometimes with an assessment questionnaire and always with a clinical interview, everything that the person is suffering from, what their complaints are, what kinds of deficiencies they're noticing in personal, work, and social environments. And then what we'll do is create a list of symptoms, and we will make an appointment for a brain assessment. We have two different kinds of assessments. One of them is called a mini Q. Q stands for quantitative. So this is a quantitative EEG. The mini Q uses 5 electrodes on the surface of the scalp to record brain activity from 5 different locations. And it's a cognitive, social, behavioral assessment. And we sit down with the patient and we discuss the possibilities of their symptoms matching what we found in terms of dysregulated areas of brain function. When we get matches, those become targeted areas for treatment. So for example, we may have a patient who's been suffering from depression, has a history of depressive symptoms. And not always, but very often, we'll find dysregulated activity in the left frontal cortex. When we see that and the patient says, yeah, I've been depressed, we can put an electrode there. And we can reward a faster frequency which should be there. So for example, when people are depressed, they may have a frequency of like 8 to 12 cycles per second or slower in that region of the brain. That region of the brain is responsible for executive function, which usually demands a much higher frequency. So we may reward a frequency of 15 to 19 or 19 to 25 cycles per second. And the way we do that is when the person is engaged with the neurofeedback learning paradigm, and let's say they're watching the movie again, we will only let the movie screen be large when their brain spontaneously produces the faster rhythm. When their brain produces the slower rhythm that has been subserving the depressive symptoms, the screen shrinks down. So during a 30 or 40 minute session, you see the screen moving back and forth, back and forth. And after just a few minutes, the patient's able to keep it in the larger aspect ratio for longer periods of time. So the brain learns very quickly to utilize that reward as a result of operant conditioning.
As you all know, these conferences cost money, so that was honoring Stents Corporation who donated for the event. And so, like I said, we don't endorse anyone's equipment, but certainly can provide information about them being an option. So we're going to ask if you have any questions to please come up here so that the video can be captured. And if you'll face that way or halfway, that'd be great. But anybody who has any questions, please come up. One of the questions that I have is, it seems like millennials, especially young professional millennials, don't like the idea of being offered neurofeedback and not knowing more definitively when we're going to start and when this is going to end. In terms of they don't care, a lot of them that I've been exposed to don't care so much about it being expensive. They know it's expensive, but they want to have an idea. They want, like, is it $3,500? Is it $4,000? Is it $5,000? Tell me, because I need something more concrete. I need a package that tells me where I'm going to go from here to here. And I haven't figured out how to package that. Do you all have any ideas about that?
Package.
I have some ideas. So I haven't had that experience. But what I would, again, if we can draw from the client's experience, so I would ask them if, my mind went to if you want to save for something, but my stereotype is millennials don't save for something. So I'm going to say if they wanted to go to a gym and develop strength, or if they wanted to lose weight, would they be able to know exactly how many times they had to go to the gym? So try to think of an analogy that applies to them, that applies to their sensibility. Because really what they're asking for is something you can't exactly tell them, but on the other hand, you could couch that with, well, we don't know exactly how many sessions, and we don't know exactly how your brain's going to respond, but why don't we start by saying, let's look how you do after 5 sessions, and after 5 sessions, we'll know how your brain responds, and then we can reevaluate again. So, do you have any thoughts about that? Okay, I thought you were coming up to the microphone. But that's probably what I would try to do with it. Basically, what you've got is somebody asking you something that you can't give them, but you're going to try your best to give them what they want. Yeah. And we open this up as questions, but if there are any thoughts, if you're sitting there thinking, you know, we didn't talk about this, or I have this experience that would be really good for other people to have. This is just so more than a Q&A. Let's just call it a conversation time. If anybody has anything to add to what we've been doing.
Well, I'm going to be brave again. I have something to offer. I was doing my own training. I had some life happen, and decided, you know, I don't feel myself. I sometimes will feel a bit of a buzzing here in my eyes, around my eyes when I get activated, and decided to do some training, and I was having difficulty getting the numbers to improve. And so I did, Tenley talked about doing hypnosis to help with your neurofeedback training. There's been talks about coaching and whatnot, and so I was doing my own training, and I decided what could be getting in the way, and what do you all describe, or how do you all define the word begrudge? Are there any ideas for what your definition for begrudge would be? So for example, I describe it for myself as kind of a bit of a judgment or being irked about something. So you kind of accept it, and you certainly accept it intellectually, but there could still be some energy around, not being flexible, okay? So to cut to the chase on it, what I did is I decided, what am I begrudging? I happened to be an amputee, and this is an accident back from '94. I do really well in spite of it. But I decided, you know, if I'm begrudging anything about it, I just decided to let that begrudging go. I just did it energetically or emotionally, psychologically, decided I'm just going to let it go. What else am I begrudging? Maybe I'm begrudging a little bit the design of nature, creation, God, at some level, decided to let that go. I decided to see my siblings, my parents, and if there's any kind of stuckedness, begrudging that I might be holding on to, somebody can cut you off on the road, and they're just not doing it the way they're supposed to. We can get impatient about how this seminar went and how things should have gone. Well, we could decide to stay a little stuck with that, or to just let it go. Long story short, after I let go of all of my begrudgings, my numbers improved dramatically within that span of my doing that visualization, if you will. And I've been trying to incorporate it more in my life, not just for that training. I got so much out of it that I will check myself now. Am I begrudging that person? Am I being impatient about that? Or feel like I know that they should be doing it a certain way? Well, I don't. But it's a holding on to that energy that you just think that you have but you don't. And so it's just so much relief from letting go of that. And it improved my numbers, and so I'm sticking to it.
So that's interesting. My friend Carolyn Cohen, who works with her husband Mike, she's an energy healer, and she taught me a cleansing technique, which is very much like that, and maybe we could just use that to end the conference if there aren't more questions. It's a 5-minute technique that we use at the end of a neurofeedback session so that we're sending off people feeling very refreshed and ready to face the world.
I think that's a great idea. For me, what I got from doing that exercise, even if I didn't explain it all that well, is that I lessened some tensions that I was holding on to that were getting in the way.
Yeah, no, that's
And
exactly what I took from
And
that.
this
Yeah.
this is the importance to understand why therapy needs to work in conjunction with neurofeedback.
Yes.
And why neurofeedback needs to be integrated. Hopefully, this is like the ideal world setting, that neurofeedback is part of the therapeutic process. So identify that because you know what is going on, and but we need to help the client to understand
Get
something
more out
else.
of the neurofeedback
Yeah.
by doing this type of work. Sure.
On that same note, I'm just curious whether it be Art or y'all, with saying that idea of kind of keeping yourself clean, one of the things I've noticed over the many years, and wonder if y'all have had the similar experience, is that as the therapist in the room or the counselor in the room, I can often tell that the clients can often get to the level of comfortableness that I am. If I am nervous, if I am uptight, if I am angry, I can swear I can see it in the numbers that the clients can see. I can see the high beta. I can see the heart rate go up, and I'm just curious if y'all have seen the same thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. The clinicians that we work together is like, if you have any personal issues, anything like, but I'm not talking to the patient, doesn't matter. Like, just take the day off. We won't help them that much because it's really transmitted and imitated and it affects the session.
It's a big responsibility to bring a
Oh,
good
yeah.
energy into the room.
Oh,
Really,
yes.
and it's
Yeah,
exactly the phrase I was
exactly.
thinking is, we're talking about quantum physics and the transmission of energy, and
Yeah, where
we matter.
where I first noticed it was when I was first learning to do alpha theta neurofeedback. And in that process, you're basically doing eyes closed. They're listening to some tone that crosses over when alpha or theta happens. And I could tell that when I was in an intense state, those clients didn't seem to get there. And yet, when I would take a deep breath and when I calmed down, it was like all of a sudden the client would cross over.
You stay in the room
I
while
had,
they're doing
and I stayed in the room the whole time because I believe in that process.
Yeah.
Even in alpha theta, I believe in watching the client, being part of the client. My tradition is I got taught what's called holding space. And I believe even in alpha theta, that's part of what I'm doing. But it's this idea to do that. And it's just been interesting to me over the many years to experience that. So it's that invitation that even with every client that comes in, I have to clear myself or I have to be in some sense. And if I'm not, I've actually held my clients up 5 minutes to go and do something for myself, because I just find it gets in that way if you don't. So just something to think about.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad
that's-
you don't have to think.
Yeah, no, that's very impressive to hold yourself up for them.
I have a question about the study that you did with the children.
I didn't do it, but I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, sorry about that. I kind of missed the beginning of that.
No.
So you said optimally the time that the neurofeedback should be done for the children is 6 to 12 minutes. Do you have any idea when they figured that out and how they figured it out?
Yeah, how was responding in the EEG? Like if they were like conditioning the direction it's supposed, it was the other way, they needed to stop the session because it was more likely this kid will have adverse reaction.
Okay.
And there are many ways that they could figure it out, but this is like neurophysiologically, the kid by itself, it tells them, stop, I don't want to do this anymore, or they were incredibly uncomfortable, or yeah, like, or physical, or neurophysiological, or that they can, or behavioral, they can let them know it's a moment to stop. Yeah, but it's hard to really get all the cues to stop, to prevent overtraining, yeah.
Thank you.
First of all, millennials aren't that bad, so just, as someone who's really interested in a little bit newer, what are the top criticisms against the use of biofeedback or neurofeedback? People say, lack of research or double-blind studies, whatever it may be. Then the second question is there a particular form of therapy that has been researched to be most effective when using neurofeedback, CBT or, SFT or anything else? Thank you. Also, just thank you to the volunteers, and give it up for Art for this.
Very good questions. I think so. So I think the biggest criticism, I think other than lack of research,
And I'm going to say there isn't so much a lack of research, but the research standard has been established predominantly by the pharmaceutical industry, and they can do double-blind studies, whereas with neurofeedback, that's hard to do. There is, NIH just funded a double-blind study, and the results of that, was that presented at ISNR? No, not ready yet. Okay, because Roger came to our conference early October and just dangled the carrot. Doesn't have the results, and they need to present it to the funding agency first.
Yeah, Dr. Roger DeBrew is out of North Carolina, and he's the head PI for this in a combination with Ohio State and some other researchers on ADHD, and it's a 5-year study. In fact, I think next week he's presenting. He was telling us he's getting ready to present, but they've been running it this is the 3rd year. There's still 2 more years. It'll actually be finished in 2020, and then he's saying it'll probably take him another year to put all the data together, but there is this multiple site, double-blind, gold standard study that's finally being done, and he can't give us any knowledge yet of what's going on, other than he did say it is on track, and I forget how many thousands of data points and pages he was saying he has of numbers and stuff. So it's hopeful and it's exciting so it is coming, at least in the area of ADHD.
In order for a drug to go to market, it has to be 25% more effective than placebo. That's not a commonly known statistic, but the pharmaceutical companies have a lot of money to promote their product with, and we don't have a lot of money to promote our product with, so we're word of mouth versus television commercials and everything else that's going on. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily the lack of studies, it's the lack of the ability to promote. And the standard, the accepted standard, although it's not the gold standard, the accepted standard for studies is a double-blind study, and that's not very practical in the work that we do.
yeah, and I think our weakness, that thanks to people here in this audience, is that we don't, or very few academic programs give you the training that you need to become a neurofeedback practitioner. And until now, and these new programs, you need to figure out your way around. And because these devices, well, not these, but some devices, they just train you for 3 days and you are ready to run a neurofeedback session. This is what is a big criticism, right? You can train anybody to train neurofeedback, just touching the computer, but getting it's a graduate course that is needed to be qualified. And this is the effort of the BCIA to try to make sure that the providers have all the certification and the knowledge. And I think this is a big criticism, that we really didn't have the foundation. Like, start weird, start here, instead of let's educate, let's learn, let's have this educational pathway, and then we will get there. I think this is a big weakness that is trying to be fixed. And another thing is, what else? Cost, yes, big,
Cost.
very big. Needs a lot of resources. I think that's probably the most important. I don't know if somebody else have more ideas.
I ran a Baylor College of Medicine VA study, randomized controlled trial with 100 veterans for treating chronic low back pain with hypnosis or biofeedback, and it's published. So there is at least one study comparing two different modalities.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, very
Yes.
good.
I think we're ready for your exercise. I do want to mention that after I did that, I call it the begrudging, maybe I need to come up with a better word, I don't know. But I had a client come in and he said, I need to do neurofeedback. He was obviously agitated, and I said, okay, you know, we can, but let's try this first. And I did that exercise with him, and he visualized different challenges for him, business, financial, family, and whatnot. And by the time we were done with that visualization, he said, man, I feel a lot better. We did neurofeedback, and it all just gelled. So just to add to your position about needing to work with the two so that you get the best result for the client. Yeah. So we're going to do an exercise now? Did you say you wanted to do that? Was there an exercise you wanted to do?
No, if we wanted to look at a report,
Oh.
I usually spend an hour and a half going over a report with a patient, developing, looking at their complaints, the data, the analysis, and recommendations. So I don't think anybody wants to stay an hour and a half. But maybe, what we haven't touched on at all here, and I think, looking a little ahead to the future, we have had a nice breadth of, what do you do if you're starting, and where is this field going to go? My personal opinion is that we have a lot of nice training programs in the United States, and as Deanna said, boy, do we need the educational institutions to get on board with it. So we've got the program here. Widener University outside of Philadelphia does a biofeedback training program. Carol Alstead in Connecticut does a biofeedback training program. You have more?
Yeah, St. Mary's here in town.
Two of them. Yeah, you guys are just, well, you're Texas, that's what they say, I guess. That's what I hear. There's Saybrook University, but there are not many. And so the training is coming from private organizations. What's not as abundant in the United States as in Europe is the research. And there is research happening in Europe. And there's some good research happening there. There's a university that Tübingen is pounding out the research. We've got some clinicians there that are really doing a lot of research, independent from any type of equipment, okay? Because equipment manufacturers do research, but we're looking for independent researchers. That's what you were looking for, I think. And so we also can learn a lot from Europe, and it's being easier to do that. So one of the things that's happening in Switzerland is, and in Russia, is they require biomarkers in order to be assessed as having had a disability. The Swiss government, their form of our Social Security disability system, doesn't use reports from psychologists, they use biomarkers. So we need to have hard data in order to determine that somebody's got a mental disability. And that's what the HBI group has been working on in conjunction with
Are those published somewhere? The published biomarkers corresponding?
Okay, the question is, are those biomarkers published? Yuri Kropotov recently put out a book, Biomarkers in Psychiatry. It's not an easy read. I've read it 3 times. But there's a lot of data in there. So what we find is that, we've been talking about QEEGs all day, intermittently. QEEGs are variable. They're variable according to the database. They're variable according to the time of day, which is why we collect the data between 9 and 4. But there's variability on how much sleep did you get the night before, how much did you eat, did you drink a cup of coffee before you came in, even though I asked you not to have any caffeine, and I sent you written instructions to do that. So there's lots of variabilities. The ERPs, the evoked response potentials, are more stable, and they're accepted by the scientific community. If I call up a physician and I say I have a QEEG, they're like, okay. And if I call up and say, I have biomarkers that indicate the evoked potentials are dysregulated, they're like, what? Where? Send me the report. Okay. So if we want to cross over into other professions, I guess the future will bear this out, but my opinion, and based on what I'm seeing in Europe, is this is the path that's going to help us cross over and become more respected in the future. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the more we know, the more we are learning, we need to incorporate all this knowledge in what we can provide and have very objective measures and evaluate, more successful what we're doing. But yeah, definitely, QEEG, even that it's getting more accepted, but still it has a lot of weaknesses. But ERPs is generally more, we learn more and we have more research about ERPs, so it's more accepted. And just for you as a clinician, just to have more information is very valuable. And because the medical community is more aware of the ERPs, they will accept it easier and they will understand it better.
Yeah. The research on EEG, if you look over the years, kind of goes like this in terms of increasing research, and the research on ERPs goes like this. There are many, many, many articles, published articles on it. Question?
So what is Switzerland using to measure that ERP?
What is Switzerland using to measure the ERP? So they're collecting the EEG, and there's a visual continuous performance task as part of the EEG. So their standard is 10 minutes eyes open, 10 minutes eyes closed, and then 20 minutes with the task. And in the task, you're looking at a visual continuous performance task. It's actually called a go, no-go task. I don't have a handy picture of it, but there's, on the monitor, an image flashes, and the image is an animal. If it's followed by another animal, the same animal, that's a go condition. That's press the button. Then there's an animal followed by a non-animal, that's no-go. And a non-animal followed by anything is ignore. So what does the brain do? Animal, that's my instruction set, I gotta get ready, I might have to press the button. And then another animal, go. Okay, but what has to happen in order for that to occur? The visual image has to get presented to the brain, so the evoked potentials measure how does that image get received by the brain, and then the auditory sound also, well, I didn't mention the auditory, but there's an auditory sound embedded in there occasionally. So we measure how does the brain receive the auditory input, and then how does the left side activate, meaning how do I compare what I have seen to other things that I've seen? It's got 4 legs, it's got a tail, it's got fur. Oh, that's an animal. It's a bear. Okay. What's my emotional response to that? This is all happening on an unconscious level, of course. And now that I've done that analysis, I have to hold on to my instruction set. Is that something I press the button for? Should I not press the button for? And how did I do? So we finish up with assessment. That process happens 3 times a second. It goes on and on and on. But that's a very stable process. People will say to me, well, you know what, I didn't eat a lot or something. I didn't feel so good that day. Well, that's like coming in and saying, was my vitamin D down because I didn't feel so good? Your blood is pretty stable. We can measure your blood and we can measure your ERPs across time, and they're pretty stable. So that's the process of how they're measured.
Yeah, so we have a lot of information because it's a continuous performance task. We can measure reaction time, errors and omissions, and all the neurophysiological data with the ERPs and each of the waves and the latency and the amplitude, and each of them have a meaning, right, depending on what is the region of the brain that is processing the sensory information. So it's really very rich on all the information you can get, and it's more consistent, and this is why they are using it more for biomarkers.
Now, you can't train ERPs directly. You train ERPs through the EEG, and then the ERPs will change.
Yeah.
The ERP's value is that they are very stable, that and that they're very, patients identify with them. If you can see that their visual processing is slow, that's going to probably relate to they have reading difficulties. My daughter's visual processing, my daughter's really, I'm very proud of her, she's very bright, but she does this funny thing. You'll talk to her, and she'll say, actually, a silly comment back. The silly comment might be like, I'd say a silly comment black. Like, no, Jenna, a silly comment back. Yeah, I know. Well, we did her ERPs, and her auditory processing is delayed. And so, as we explained this to her, she actually said, I know that. I know that, and I know by the time I say it, by the time I say black, I've heard it properly, and I know it was back, but I don't want to waste the time to correct what I'm saying. I'd rather you have to think through it. She knew that whole process. Okay, so that's a really nice, so it's not a problem. She's made it through life, and people think she says this funny thing, but if you have a visual processing problem, that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
We have a question from online. We want to involve our online community.
Oh, yes.
And so it's a little off topic, but Diana Valdez from Fort Worth is asking, I'm interested in the 2 excellent presenters. I'm wondering if they are trained and or use clinical hypnosis in combination with bio-neurofeedback with their clients.
I have been ASH certified, American Society of Clinical Hypnosis. My early years were actually in hypnosis. So I was very active in the Philadelphia Hypnosis Society. So while I have not maintained my active status in ASH, I still am very familiar with hypnosis, and I think it's an important tool that I have that I can use in working with clients. So even just pacing with their breathing, pacing with their talking, and making suggestions. And I do from time to time use hypnosis.
Thank you, Diana. Anybody else have any more questions? What would you like to do? Did you say that you wanted to offer? You're very gracious in asking if anybody was interested in you sharing how you present an assessment report. Is that what I heard you, was that correct in what I heard you say?
I'll be glad to do that. I don't want to keep any, it's Saturday.
No,
It-
did you
But
just
if
show,
people
did
want
you
to
just
say-
scroll down to the report?
The energy release. I'll be glad to do that too. So we could even split up if we wanted to. I can do, or if people want to do both. We're here, our flights don't leave till 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
One thing that just popped into mind is you mentioned that you have a list. I wondered if you could email it to us so we could distribute it fast about some habits or practices that you ask of your clients and patients that are doing a neurofeedback and biofeedback so that they are more assured of having a positive response.
I'll be glad to send
Awesome.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess it's up to you. I think we're both willing. If you'd like us to go through a report, we could like slam through that in 15 minutes. I can do a cleansing. What do you want?
Your own hand, cleanse.
Oh, that was pretty serious.
Report.
Can you send us the report so we can look at it?
Yes, yes, I can do that. I'll send you a report without names. Okay. I did that with template because that's a whole nother thing.
Do we need to share our email addresses?
I'll send it to Art. I think that'll be easier, right? All right. Okay. So any final questions, or we'll do a cleansing?
You send the slides to Art too, so that we can distribute?
He has them, or should have them. Yeah, somebody's got them, and yes. Yeah, and there's a couple of extra things in there. There's a, where they draw and talk. I don't know what they call those, on a slide presentation. There's a couple of those in there that I got from Heart Math. I think there's a couple of forms that I use that I put in there. So glad to share. Okay. So keeping in mind with, sorry I'm moving, but keeping in mind with, we need to be in the right space to do this. I need to feel relaxed while I do it as well. So, all right. So we're going to finish our day here anyway. Slide forward so I can see everybody. And let's begin. Eyes open or eyes closed, it doesn't matter. And let your feet rest on the floor. And just let yourself begin to notice how the floor supports you. How your feet feel in your shoes. How the chair holds your weight and you can let yourself sink into it. Without judging, just noticing. Let yourself notice these and the rhythm of your breathing. Whatever you're doing is fine. Is your breathing deep? Is it shallow? It doesn't matter. Let yourself notice it. Let yourself take 1 or 2 more breaths. And while you do that through imagination, place a trash can next to you. And let yourself notice whether you're holding on to worries that aren't needed. And let them be placed in the trash can. Right now, you don't need any worries. There's nothing you can do as you sit here. You can let them go. And are there fears? Fears from the past, fears that are current. You can place them in the trash. Are you holding on to worries that don't even belong to you? Worries of loved ones, maybe something that you picked up from a patient, even something that you've been holding on to from somebody that you don't know. You can place those worries in the trash. Apprehensions, Are there apprehensions about the future that can be released and placed in the trash? Grudges that aren't needed, that don't serve any purpose, can be placed in the trash. Are there any obstacles that you might not even be aware of that have held on, that are not needed? You don't need to define them. You can place them in the trash. Let yourself become aware of your breathing again without judging, just becoming aware. And take another moment and just notice if there are any residual thoughts, feelings that you'd like to release and place in the trash. Go ahead and do that. And there may be other things that you're holding on to that you're not sure if should be released, but you can release them and rely upon your brain and body's ability to find its own homeostasis. So let those things go. Place them in the trash, and when you feel done, close the lid, knowing that you will leave the trash behind here. And take a moment and let yourself enjoy any openness that you might feel inside. If that doesn't make sense to you, that's okay. Just take a moment and follow your breathing, whatever pace it's at. And after one more breath, go ahead and open your eyes with a sense of feeling refreshed and ready to enjoy the rest of what lies ahead of you. So, some people yawning. That was about 4 minutes. So it doesn't take that long. And if anybody wants to make any comments, we can. And if you feel like you just want to leave, thank you very much for coming. I think we all had an enjoyable time with you and appreciate you being here and appreciate having us.
Thank you very much. We feel very fortunate to have had you present to us. Thank you again. And this concludes our conference in terms of audience and clinicians that are visiting for CEUs. We are going to stay behind to have a membership meeting. And so we're going to try to make that brief because it's been a long day. So if you want to stay behind to participate in our membership meeting, we'll start that shortly. Thank you.